Welcome to Commerce Media Matters, your go-to podcast for unpacking the world of commerce media. Here, we catch up with industry leaders on news, research, insights, perspectives, and everything in between.
Hi, I'm Paul, Chief Growth Officer at Voodoo.
And I'm Nick, founder and CEO at Voodoo. And today, we've got a seriously sharp operator in the chair. We're joined by Andreas Reiffen, founder and CEO of Pentaleap, and one of the early architects of retail media as we know it today. Before Pentaleap, Andreas founded Crealytics, helping major retailers rethink performance marketing and product advertising at scale.
That's right. Andreas has been right at the center of retail media's evolution, from search and sponsored listings through to the infrastructure powering modern retail media networks. He's someone who understands both the mechanics and the bigger power shifts happening across e-commerce.
Andreas, welcome to the show. We love having you here.
Thanks so much for having me.
As a fellow founder, I'm always curious to understand a founder's journey, and you've built an incredible business with Crealytics and now Pentaleap. For our listeners who might not know of your backstory, what was the problem you set out to solve with launching Pentaleap? And congratulations, by the way. And who are you building it for today?
Before we founded Pentaleap, we wanted to really listen to the market. So we had multiple interviews with larger retailers, retail media networks, and we sensed there was a lot of frustration with the incumbent tech. Nobody was really happy. People felt they were not being taken seriously, and they felt locked into the one thing that they couldn't easily escape at the beginning. There weren't as many alternatives, and the incumbents did ad serving, they provided the front end, they plugged in demand. So we identified probably two core problems. The first one was on-site wasn't going well. We saw Amazon making 80% roundabout just with sponsored products, while most retailers did not get a fair slice of the pie. So when we looked into this, we saw there was a disconnection of paid and organic. So it was operated in silos. And for paid, it was mostly designed to showcase products that advertisers wanted users to see. But the end users, they want a smooth journey. They want to search for something, find it immediately and buy it. And if you see a product that isn't relevant, you don't click. So the retailer doesn't make money from the click, but the product will also not sell. So you also damage the retail business. So this was the first problem we wanted to solve. And the second one was we heard from many retailers, they were struggling to raise true media budget, and all they were getting was trade budget.
That's right.
Then we spoke with brands, and it was interesting to see that from the two sides, retailer side, they complained about the hard effort to sell media to the brands that were not really receptive for it. And then the brands, they felt, well, I have to talk to 10 different retailers. I'm coming from a mass media approach, and now it's so fragmented. We were working towards making this industry more programmatic and allowing brands to spend money across a multitude, across a network of retailers, and allow retailers to, still sell direct, but somehow backfill demand through a more programmatic-like approach. So those were the two key problems we wanted to solve, and this is why we founded Pentaleap.
And now you're working with the big retailers like Macy's and Bloomingdale's, and what are you helping them change now?
So it's interesting that the journey, we have three prominent examples. It's CVS, Home Depot, and Macy's. And the journey always started very similar. It started from the relevance problem they wanted to solve. So we implement our tech to make sponsored products more relevant, improve the conversion rate, click-through rate, and ultimately the on-site monetization. Once this, let's call it ad serving layer was implemented, they all wanted to take the next step. And the next step in the Macy's example was they plugged Amazon in and are now getting access to the huge budgets that live within the Amazon ecosystem. And we see our other partners doing the same thing, all implementing a backfill mechanism now where you run your direct sales, but also get access to programmatic demand. So whether it's CVS or Home Depot, everyone is taking a similar direction here.
So, I mean, you've obviously been doing this for a while. So looking at the industry as a whole, when you look at it, the retail media component of it now, how would you decide the current state of play? Are they making all those transitions into off-network yet? Are they just getting their infrastructure right? Where do you see the current state of play?
So it's, first of all, super, super dynamic right now. We had a world like 3 years ago, there was probably Criteo and Citrus ad around, and there was no other alternative in the market. So it was pretty obvious what retailers needed to do. Today, we have a wild ecosystem of many, many, many different players.
Yeah.
And what I'm observing is it seems like a competition between business models right now more than individual companies. What I mean by that is if you take a look at, let's take Macy's just as one example, it's demand coming out of the Criteo system, from the Criteo front end. It's being served by Pentaleap. We plug in Amazon retail ad service as a demand source. So there's a division between those who actually serve ads on site and other parties that manage the front end. Home Depot is another good example. Pentaleap serving all ads on site, while Vantage provides what we call cross-channel orchestration. So they have this one front end that essentially is built to plug into the APIs at Google, Meta, TikTok, Pinterest, in-store, and so on. But while on-site is just another connection point, we provide APIs so it can be connected. So we have those platforms that come from originally serving ads on site and having a front end for sponsored products and display, that then felt, well, the market wants to go full funnel cross channel. So they kept adding like connections to Google and Pinterest. So we have this all-in-one breed of company that is like come from the ad serving side and trying to expand. And then we have some on the other side, like Vantage, and there's a range of other companies that solve the orchestration problem. And then there are now specialists like Pentaleap, and there are a few others who do ad serving in a, let's say, front-end agnostic or headless way, just providing the logic. So a Vantage plus a Pentaleap is super powerful and works seamlessly together. That's what Home Depot is doing, while some others historically come from the what's an easy plug-and-play solution. And as the market matures, that decoupled model has many advantages. So this is like how dynamic this ecosystem is currently. And we probably have like 10, 15 different startups, all providing some value. So it's, I think, became much more favorable for the retailers.
Yeah.
But it became also somewhat more complex to navigate.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. And so there's 10, 15 startups that have just kind of, arrived. This is really because of this explosion in retail media, right? And it seems like we've got to get in here. Let's find a problem. Let's fix it. We've got a solution. Let's join this kind of, bandwagon. And we've seen this spin up over the last, couple of years. We've seen just explosion of retail media and commerce media at all the big events. Cannes is no different. Like it's just everywhere. There's all this growth, and you've totally validated what I was going to ask you around, but there's also lots of noise. What do you think the biggest misunderstanding about retail media right now? Is it that it's really clean and simple and you can act on it? Or is it messy and it's just got all these players in it? What is the truth about retail media right now that most of us get wrong?
I think it's rather the latter. It's definitely somewhat messy. It feels a bit like the Wild West. Everyone has started to stand up a retail media network. So if we take a look at how the industry evolved, it's super interesting. Initially, there was just Hook Logic. They pivoted their old display business, got into retail media, and they kind of had let's call it an ad network for sponsor products. So a brand was putting money into Hook Logic, and from there it was spent across a broad set of different retailers. So there was no fragmentation initially. In the meantime, Amazon has started to really take off. And I remember it's probably in 2018, they were at 10 to 15 billion in ad revenue, something like that. They were growing super fast. During that point of time, or at that point of time, retailers were still like, oh yeah, let them play this ad game. We sell products to customers. We are not like that. Like cluttering websites is not cool. But as this kept growing and growing and growing and brought all the margin in, everyone said, well, we have to do it, whether we like it or not.
The margins were so strong, right? It's like CFOs saying, no, we're doing this. We're doing it today.
Sure, it's such a, retail requires a lot of focus on all the details and processes, and getting a CPC in from a click on a product. This is immediately doubles, triples the margin you would otherwise make. So everyone wanted to replicate then what Amazon did. So this network approach, this ad network approach immediately was dead. And everyone said, well, I don't know, mid-sized retailer in the United States, and I now stand up my retail media network. So I will do exactly the same. I will go to my suppliers because I already have a relationship with them, and I offer them advertising opportunities. So basically saying, I didn't like this network because my competitor here next to me got a slice from my brand's budget and I dislike that. It's mine. So they all went direct. The end result is not very different. They still get a slice of the brand's budget, but the workload and the complexity increases. So as everyone has now built a walled garden game, we come to the realization that it's super, super hard to acquire real media budgets. Yeah. So the complexity, and back to your specific question, it's not really a media game. And I can give you a few examples where we see this. We have some clients where the return on ad spend is around 10. And on other channels, if a brand spends on Google, you would probably have a ROAS of 3 or something. So why isn't more budget flowing in? And the reason is simply that it's the same trade budget that was assigned before, and retailers don't talk directly to the media people.
And that leap is what the promise is, but it's not being made en masse yet, is it?
And, it's not really a media play. It's also not purely the same trade, but it's somehow between, relationships between retailers and brand that need to be maintained. It's to some extent there are media opportunities. Some brands do assign media budgets, others don't, but it's super complex. And so it's not as easy for a small retail media network, no matter how efficiently you can run your ad business, how great your tooling is, how amazing the ROAS is, as long as you still talk to those brands that have trade budgets in their hands. It's hard to escape from this. Reason why, back to Pentaleap, why we are not trying to basically kick out the old direct sales model and make it all programmatic. But if a retailer sells to brands 1 to 50, but doesn't have the capacity to go 1-to-1 to brand 51 to 5,000 end of the list, then allow brands to spend that money where they are already active. And that's on Amazon, that's on Google, that's on Trade Desk or whoever.
I mean, so there's a lot of explosion of growth as we've covered, and it's very complex. But there is also a lot of talk about some retail media networks, particularly the ones that have been around for a while, hitting sort of a ceiling of scale. Do you see signs of that? Maybe not scale in terms of eyeballs, but scale in terms of capability. But yeah, there's a lot of discussion around have they hit a ceiling, and are those huge growth numbers that we've seen over the last couple of years starting to plateau?
So first of all, it's super hard to know in the first place what the real growth is, because if you relabel trade budget as media, you can show amazing growth numbers.
Yeah.
Whether that ever hits the bottom line, I think it's even for companies like eMarketer, it's not easy to dissect this. But clearly, everyone feels now that it's not that easy. It's super hard. Some brands have decided to just engage with a small number of retail media networks and get those right, but not spend with others. So what I'm usually doing is, if you take the GMV and you compare the ad revenues a retailer makes against that GMV. Let's do this for Amazon. I know this number. It's about 8%. 8% of Amazon's total GMV is ad revenue they make. So if you now calculate that same number for retail media networks, you will see that most of them are probably below a 1%. So now you have two differences. One is the sheer size, and retail media revenues are somehow a function of the overall e-com sales you make. So if your e-com business at some point no longer scales, it will be harder to scale your media business. So it scales proportionally. But the second point is adjusting this by size and taking the much lower GMV of Amazon's competitors already into account. They still fall short on the ratio. That's a huge problem. So the question is, why is that? I mean, there are many reasons. One is the sheer size. If you're Amazon, there is just no way around you. Brands have to get that right. The second one is discoverability. Every retailer talks about, well, in-store and off-site and this and that. That's not how Amazon does it. Amazon is making about 75, maybe 80% just from sponsored products. So what is that? It's if you don't sponsor your products, you disappear in the huge Amazon assortment. Yeah. So if some other retailer doesn't have a marketplace business where the visibility isn't the number one problem, of course, there is no need for brands to pour that much money into it. So there are structural things that make things
to stand out
much harder.
This is a fascinating space that I think there's a lot of, as we came back to my original question, there's a lot of noise. And I think a lot of the noise glazes over the reality of this space. And you always seem to kind of get to the heart and the truth of it, similar to Kiri. Kiri likes to dial in, Colin. Not saying the others don't, but there's a truth there that you're kind of tapping into. You know, the one thing I always think about is these tech stacks, or these retail media stacks. You sometimes refer to them as monolithic, right? There's these really big, huge, cumbersome stacks mostly. What are they like operationally? You've kind of alluded to that at the start. It's a bit clunky and messy. I'm assuming that you're talking about the stacks as well, but what are they like operationally? And when they start to get pretty big, where do they start to actually falter? Where do the cracks start to show in these RMN networks that these retailers are running?
I do believe there are very solid, good solutions today, and things have evolved super fast. Okay. I think the limitations with the old stacks were that, first of all, they were super expensive. They came with built-in demand. So in the early days, if you sold retail media, you helped retailers also to sell to the brands. And at some point, tools like PackView and Sky were connected, and some retailers had multiple millions per year coming in through those platforms, but they were only connected to the leading incumbent. So if you wanted to switch, you could do that, but you had to rip out your whole stack. And with that, the whole money that was flowing in was gone. So there was a super strong lock-in that came through demand, and this made it super hard for retailers to switch to another stack. Now things have changed because demand. You can now connect a lot of demand through the Pentaleap platform. We have RTB, which is a super simple mechanism to connect external demand from the big ad tech platforms. So I think the new stacks, what we see, whether this is composable, decoupled, or all in one, what retailers are trying to accomplish is play a full funnel cross-channel game. So means if you run a walled garden, you need this centralized front end where brands can run the whole thing. Make it, at least, given the fragmentation of all the many different retail media networks, at least make it easy within the walled garden to spend money. So there are some products that are pretty good at connecting different channels. They have, let's say, basic ad serving capabilities. But then we have now the best in breed competition where you can choose stellar ad serving tech that is completely agnostic to which front end orchestration tool would plug in. And then you see a new breed of companies that has put everything into building the most comprehensive tool with a super slick front end that makes things easy for retailers. So if you stitch just on-site ad serving, which is super important because it affects your whole business. It affects the retail business. If you don't get that right, your website no longer converts. So that's a central critical piece. And those products are compatible with all the front ends. There are several examples. There's Pentaleap. We have you probably know Particular Audience, it's an Australian company. Also, very similar approach, unifies the ranking on site, is kind of agnostic to which front end plugs in. So you have those two that you can put together, and retailers get something that is probably currently more powerful and also more flexible, and as you don't incur the same lock-in, you even get this at a lower price point. So it requires somebody who understands how to put those two components together. And so it's a world of a difference compared to what we had 3-4 years ago. And I think it's quite solid. It doesn't solve to the full extent the fact that we are still operating in a small walled garden that is a tiny fraction of what Amazon is. So the scale problem of all those walled gardens will not go away. Reason why our ad serving piece connects to the outside world, and we're trying to just kill this big fragmentation issue.
Yeah, gotcha.
So do you see sort of the two classes as well, the guys that are big enough to stick to keeping it walled garden, like you say, the Amazons and the really big guys? And then do you see the second tier then looking for more interoperability and, being able to, I guess, provide that network approach where, you can plan across multiple RMNs? Do you see that sort of coming about?
I think that's spot on. This is probably how things will evolve over time.
Yeah.
The very, very big guys, let's take Home Depot as an example. They own the home improvement category. They are the Amazon of home improvement. Do they really need demand from Google, or do they need to connect Amazon? I think they have a level of importance for their brands where they can play the same walled garden game. But how many of those are out there?
Yeah.
It's a handful of companies.
It's that top tier and then the best of the rest, isn't it? Sort of thing.
Exactly. So I believe that going forward, there will be a handful of companies that can exclusively run a whole walled garden thing. But if you then take the much smaller ones, let's say a few 100 million in annual revenues, that's absolutely impossible to stand up a retail media walled garden business. So those smaller guys at some point may completely rely on a network. One thing we are currently also seeing that is related to this, we have a client that is implementing an ad network with us, and means they operate in the pharmacy vertical, and they know that there are like 10 to 15 smaller players in the market, and those smaller players cannot stand up a retail media network. So that larger company can own the brand relationships and basically act as an ad network for those smaller players, which is good for both sides because they gain more scale. The others get ads efficiently without standing up a whole sales organization. So I do believe this is what we are gonna see. The smaller the retail media network is, the more reliant they will probably be on this programmatic approach.
Yeah.
The ones in the middle, they have a hybrid. The very big guys exclusively sold direct.
And do you think that when that sort of stuff starts to happen and it's made easy, then we might see some of these actual media dollars flow, because it's easy for a traditional media agency to start thinking about, like you said, this chemist network, for want of a better expression, is then big enough and easy enough to trade with that you're going to see that as an option from a media organization? Do you think that could be the catalyst for unlocking true media dollars?
I think we will see exactly this when retail media and media merge into one thing. That is something that will ultimately happen at some point of time. We just won't call it retail media any longer.
We couldn't agree more.
If there's a brand that spends money on Google, they probably use the Google PMax product. And what do they want to do? They want to increase their sales. So if now Google has programmatic access to hundreds of retail media networks and on-site ads, why wouldn't a Google-funded sponsored products show up at one of those smaller retailers when people search? So this means retail media search and broader search might merge into one thing. And then it's the person who's in charge of the Google PMax budgets and steers this, and all of a sudden those boundaries between, well, this is just normal media and this is now retail media, it will eventually blur at some point of time. We are just at the very beginning of this. So it's gonna start this year. We have a partnership agreement with Teats. We have another partnership agreement with a very big search engine. We run Amazon together with Macy's through our platform. So it's probably the birth year of programmatic retail media, and time will tell how this evolves.
Yeah, fantastic. It's exciting this year, real exciting. Let's talk about ROAS. A year or two ago, incrementality in retail media felt difficult to prove in practice. What's your take on that, and what have you seen change since then, technically or structurally, that's starting to shift in the conversation? And I know that you've been vocal about the ROAS, and you've had some really great dialogue. So I'd like to understand, what's your take on the whole space?
Very edgy opinion in that sense. So my background is I represented enterprise level clients buying ads from Google Meta, and our game at that point of time was never trust the publisher. They have a currency. This is ROAS or ROI. And it's, of course, in their very best interest to show the most beautiful looking numbers and make you believe that this is the true impact you get. We came to the conclusion there's a platform level measurement, but that's how they interpret their performance. And if you rely on this, you have a weird game, because the one who makes money with you also defines the value of the currency. So we advocated for an independent measurement, and we never saw anything amazing coming from from those companies who sold media. There was solid methodology. You could do incrementality testing, marketing mix modeling, or you had some like post-exposure measurement in place. And we are seeing this, in my opinion, same thing now. Brands they claim more transparency, but that's not what they really want. What they really want in reality is they want to see a better ROAS and have amazing methodology that is super accurate. It's a radio button and not checkboxes. So you can, with a current measurement, you can either see an amazing ROAS or you can have a very accurate measurement that will probably not show the same super amazing, beautiful ROAS across the board. So I don't think we have a tech issue here that we need to solve. It's the question, do large retail media networks really want to put a super thorough measurement in place? And do brands that know this is real, this is super accurate, I 100% trust it, although I see a much lower ROAS, am I willing to pour more budget into this? And that's the real conflict. So whatever I'm seeing is a lot of talking about measurement with very little real effort to make this as accurate as it could be. Again, the reason is it's an incentive problem. And also fair to ask, like, can we expect big publishers who run a media business to be super, super accurate in all measurement and eventually get less money in? This we haven't seen this from Google, we haven't seen it from Amazon, we haven't seen this from any retargeting company. So it was always left to the advertiser to ultimately somehow figure out what the true impact is.
Yeah, no, interesting. I think there's not a lot of motivation to provide the accuracy at the moment for a retail media network that's got huge margins, particularly the bigger guys at the top end of the tree. I mean, they've got those massive margins and they've got that, that power to wield around, you need to spend with me to be visible. So there's not a lot of motivation, I think, to get these things correct. How do you think brands, though, should think about measurement then with that in mind? Like how does a brand really understand that a dollar moved from, I guess, a traditional media channel to a retail media network is working harder for them? What would your advice be for them?
It's first of all, it's super hard. Otherwise, there were companies who had there would be companies who had solved this, and we are not seeing anyone being fully confident. I think if you're a big spender like whatever Unilever or some huge CPG company, you need a whole team of data analysts, scientists to focus on measurement, and it's not a trivial thing to do. Like if you operate on Google or Meta, I think there are pretty good ways. What everyone who is super savvy in measurement does is what's called triangulation. So you do some multi-touch attribution. You run incrementality tests. Incrementality tests inform a marketing mix model. So you come from different directions, from the most granular data, that's MTA, more top-down, where you switch something on or off, that's incrementality testing, and the modeling. So this triangulation works really well, but it's much more feasible with Meta and Google because you can run geo experiments, you can switch off things in certain geolocations. Retail media networks usually don't facilitate this easily, so you have to really make a major effort. Is it possible to get to 100% accuracy? No, it's not, but you can still turn spend off and turn it on and see what happens. You can probably request, if you have enough power, sales transaction data from the retailers you work with, because you don't want to see just your ad sales or sales triggered after a click on an ad. You want to see the overall sales volume, and does this fluctuate if you put more money in? So there are certainly ways to handle that, but it's super complex. You probably need a lot of power in as a brand with your retailer, and then you probably can get somewhat close. Hard problem to crack.
You need the distribution and the marketing budget to do it too. I mean, at the end of the day, you mentioned the big guys because they're the guys that can do it. They can switch off elements and switch on elements, and they've got the people and the measurement capabilities to do that. So it is tough out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I just quickly before we jump onto something else, I just wanted to add to that. So we talked about lots of companies and there's lots of 10, 15 startups. Are there some standout measurement? You don't need to name them and you don't need to kind of identify, but are you seeing some standout kind of specific retail media network measurement startups or companies trying to solve this, or no one's tackling this?
Yeah, I can't speak about details. I know Incremental is one of the players that seems to be focused on retail media specifically.
Listen up, Incremental. If Andreas says you're good, you're good. Who's next?
If I were a brand with a substantial budget in retail media, I would probably start to talk to those who lead the broader measurement space. So there's house.io in the game. We have measured.com, who I know pretty well. So those guys are excellent when it comes to figuring out what methodology you could use to somehow get close to what the impact is. And they're super smart people. Do they have an out-of-the-box solution? Probably not. It's going to be more of a consulting gig to some extent, I guess. But again, it's a hard problem to crack. And those who crack it can probably do substantially better. So before you waste your time in figuring out a better bidding on Amazon or other retail media networks, if you don't know what you get, this whole exercise of optimizing your bids across retailers and channels is totally useless.
Yeah, pointless. That's a great answer. Thank you. We haven't mentioned the bingo word AI or its new cousin, agentic, yet. Oh, there, I've said it. Look, agentic commerce is obviously the phrase on everyone's lips. I cannot wait to go to a few of the conferences coming up, and it's going to be a bingo word at Cannes for sure. But, AI isn't new to retail media. It's been powering bidding and targeting and optimization for years. What feels different now? What are you seeing with the releases and UCP and what's happening with Shopify? What's going on? What are you seeing that's different with the agentic commerce space, which is really now kind of blowing up? What does it mean to retail media? What are you seeing?
So I would always differentiate between two models. If you have the Amazon Rufus model, that is your owned agent that is proprietary and basically helps users that hit your website to better find the products they are looking for or inspire them to buy something. That's one thing, because that's what I would still call on-site. So you can monetize that in exactly the same way. It's actually something we just analyzed. Where does Amazon place ads in Rufus? How they have sponsored questions, for example. And there are lots of ways how you can monetize this, in my opinion, equally well, if not eventually even better than the normal website. But then we have those third-party agents that is ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude and so on. That's always framed as a potential retail media killer. I think that's very short-sighted to say, because it's a threat to the retail model itself. Because retailers, what is a retailer that no longer owns the access to customers? If people no longer hit websites but buy from agents, retailers become fulfillment companies in the end.
Yeah.
And that's clearly nothing they will ever want. So the question is now, clearly there is a new channel emerging, I would say. So many years ago, and you guys have seen that, right? Like how often have we heard retail is dead? Because first it was social commerce that would kill retail, and we had like waves, and every time this was the big revolution, and ultimately they are still around. So what I expect is that sales coming through AI agents, similarly to marketplaces where you also don't own the transaction and the customer data, they will just become part of the mix. And they will grow slowly, maybe contribute to 5% of the volume, at some point maybe 10%. So they will part of that mix. I don't believe that suddenly retail will want to go will go away. Retailers don't want third-party AI agents, so they will try to pull traffic to their side. Users sometimes also like the usability, look and feel of the websites they are visiting. Reason why they also don't all buy through marketplaces that are around. So I don't think that we will see an immediate disruption of the whole retail media game. I think it's going to be just an additional channel.
Well, I mean, we're seeing that a little bit, aren't we, with the OpenAI ad experience, and we're seeing the big retailers buy space in there to bring them back into their systems and to power their RMNs. We've seen the announcement with Criteo also working in that space of recent days. So, yeah, is it just another surface now to help the retail media networks and get them back to the retail? And is agentic just a new way of saying that they're going to be able to connect up APIs, or like they would have had to hardwire it? I mean, that's what I think. At NRF, it was interesting to hear OpenAI say that we can't let agents go out in the wild because a retailer can't determine between a nefarious bot and a good bot. So they were encouraging people to set up brand experiences and use those ad services within their interface. So I think I agree with you, Andreas. I think that this is another channel, at least for the short term, that retail media networks, if they're really clever, can harness and bring back into their world and their environments.
A question on the functionality of those ChatGPT ads. Are they supposed to link traffic back to the website and the transaction happens on the website, or is this a shoppable ad that transacts on the ChatGPT side?
Well, I mean, I haven't seen much of the test being outside of the US, but I think the idea is that there's going to be both of those things. Certainly from a vested interest, Voodoo is very interested in seeing the shoppable ad, seeing the actual conversion happen within the surface. And that's not just within the LLM or the chat surface, but also within ad surfaces. Mm-hmm. But as I understand it, and from the commentary I've been reading, what we're seeing is more the same sort of thing as sponsored search, whereby they're using that sort of those questions and AdWords type approaches to get more traffic back into their environment. So just filling up the top of their funnel that they're losing from traditional search models that have been disrupted because people are starting their, I guess, product discovery journeys out by going into an LLM and asking a question. That's what I've seen. You might know more. You might be, it's an interesting and evolving space. Obviously, it's only a test from OpenAI.
Mm. Yeah, I believe as long as things would link back, that's not a threat at all, because you still get the traffic on the website. It's all nice. You own the transaction. If people at a much larger scale, then we will see it in the next couple of months and maybe even years. People transact to a great extent from those AI agents and you don't see the transaction, I think that's the real threat. And the other question is how much, to what extent will people continue to visit websites?
Yeah, look, you're asking questions of a company that has a kind of firm hold in this space for a little while. What we have seen, and we can't obviously go into detail, but from some very big activity with a number of retailers, that the strategy that OpenAI is employing, where they're going to be driving traffic right now, so they're creating, obviously there's the intent, they're leveraging the intent, and then at the moment they're driving that traffic to said retailers. That will start to shift and change over time as they see a need and a commercial, simply a commercial need or a commercial outcome to leverage, which is they can participate in that transaction fee if they can hold that shopping behavior there.
Yeah. There's no reason why the retailer would be blind to the transaction with some of the technologies that are being proposed, because it's still...
They'll be participating.
And they still need the pipes to flow. So they're still going to see that Stripe is the gateway. That's going to be a Stripe gateway into said retailer's Stripe. And so they're still... Yes, they're probably sharing the data a little bit, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Anyway, that is a world that we're going to see unfold rapidly. We're almost at time, Andreas, but we always end on a little game that we play, really easy. It's a little bit of a word association, a little bit of quick fire questions. Mm-hmm. So you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
What was the last thing that you bought online?
Washing detergent.
Online?
CPG. Yeah, online. Right. Okay.
What's your go-to online shop?
Amazon. I'm boring, but that's where I buy a lot of stuff. It's easy.
That's the answer we get a lot.
Now, do you TikTok? And if you do TikTok, are you a watcher or do you get involved and create content?
I don't use TikTok at all. I see it on my daughter's phone. That's annoying enough. Yeah. I don't use it.
Other social media channels do you use? And if so, have you bought something from social media directly recently?
I use Instagram, try to limit my time on it. I don't recall that I bought something directly from Instagram. Linking out, buying something then inspired, yes, but not directly.
Now, we've all been in this game a wee while. You're a young man, so you can't go too far back. But what is the most memorable ad campaign of all time? Normally, it's a childhood memory. It doesn't have to be. It can be the teenage years or those formative years. What was the most memorable ad campaign that you can think back to?
I remember there was like a dish soap. It was called Fairy Ultra. And they had an ad. I think it was in Spain. People speaking in German with a bold Spanish accent, and the guy said like, while people in Villarriba are still trying to clean the dishes, people in Villabajo are already done. I don't know what. And it was the thing was so sticky that I still remember it.
It stays in your head.
Quick link back to our measurement topic. Like, I think it's if you see now me remembering an ad that I saw probably 30 years ago, means that it's so hard to measure branding because it still will somehow influence my purchase behavior. While clicking on some Google PLA, I will, of course, not remember when I clicked on something like this. It's more transactional by nature. But good question.
And the power of the creative, right?
Well, that's what I was going to say, Nick. I agree. It's hard to... You can't just put spots and dots in a measurement framework around, because the unknown multiplier is how creative you can be with your messaging. And I think sometimes, particularly in digital and programmatic advertising, that is almost lost. You forget the art of creativity of these great ads from the past.
If you go forward, my last comment, as we spoke about AI, I think what will still be super complex and be a big differentiator is branding, the transactional side of things. I think it's a numbers game. It can be handled by AI, but building a brand identity and positioning a company in the right way, that's something that is super complex, and I don't see this ever going away. So for young people focusing on their future, like I think moving up the funnel and trying to put numbers against branding, that's a huge opportunity.
What a great way to end, because I hope you're right. I hope that the creativity in our industry is not lost. Thank you so much for your time and joining us for this session. It's truly insightful.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate all your good questions.
No, thanks, mate. It's been fantastic. We really appreciate you making the time. We know you're very busy. You're now obviously going back between Berlin and New York. So, can't thank you enough, mate.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Commerce Media Matters podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow and subscribe. We're always on the pulse of the ever-changing landscape of commerce media, ready to share the newest trends, insightful perspectives, and expert opinions with you. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep making media that matters. This podcast is executively produced and edited by Priya Tahazadeh, Sandy Ho, and me, Rachel Fang. This podcast is recorded on the lands of the Bidjigal, Gadigal, and Wurundjeri people, and we wish to acknowledge them as the traditional owners of the land.